Pada 1, Sutra 20.
Good morning, Ma'am.
For the others, this asamprajnata samadhi could come through faith, vigor, memory, contemplation, and or by discernment. These are some of the methods Patanjali gives that will be discussed further in Book 2, the portion on yogic practice. Just briefly, faith must be there, or at least courage. You must be strong, and you should have a good memory of all the mistakes you have made and the lessons you've learned, so as not to fall back into the worldly rut again. And of course, there must be contemplation, or samadhi, as Patanjali has been talking about all along. And finally, discernment or discrimination between the real self and the unreal, or the self and prakriti. I like reading this other interpretation. If it's okay with you guys, I'll read this too, because it gives, he talks a little more about faith, and he kind of goes into that. To others, asamprajnata samadhi is preceded by faith, strength, mindfulness, cognitive samadhi, and discriminative insight. To the others, in quotes, refers to those seekers whose progress is not stalled by the thought of becoming. We look to faith to sustain us through difficulties and to provide meaning even in trying situations. Faith is not simply a higher form of belief. It is not a powerful wish for something to be true. Faith is a state of certainty, of knowing. It is related to direct perception. Putting our finger in ice water produces sensations of cold. We say with full faith that the water is cold. Looking out my window, I see that it is raining, and I have faith in what my senses report to me. But consider this example. I wake up, take a mental inventory of my health, and conclude that I am fine. I have abundant energy and no aches or pains. Yet later that day, I am surprised when my doctor finds that my blood pressure is so high that I need to take medication to control it. What went wrong with my direct perception? My mind was not steady or clear enough to make the proper assessment. It was insufficient to the task. My mind's assessment was tested and proved incorrect by an instrument capable of detecting subtle physiological states, a blood pressure gauge. Seekers look to experience the source of life, the essence of all things, God. They may encounter sensations or thoughts in prayer, worship, and meditation that lead them to believe that what is happening is holy, that their belief in God is being confirmed. But how can they be sure? In the above example, our perceptive powers could not detect hypertension, even though it existed. Our mind can be fooled in many ways. Many years ago, there lived a simple, illiterate man whose job was to ring the temple bells before sunrise as a call to worship. He had unfailingly dispatched this responsibility since he was a young boy. It so happened that one day he became too ill to go to work. He was at home recuperating in bed when suddenly he became agitated. His wife rushed to his bedside. "What is it, dear husband? What disturbs you so? This is terrible. What are we to do? I am too sick to ring the temple bells tomorrow morning." "Yes, this is so, my husband. But the doctor said that in a few days you will be well enough to continue with your duties. Don't you understand? If I cannot ring the bells, the sun will not rise." He had linked the bell ringing with the rising of the sun. He had no recollection of a sunrise that was not preceded by his bell ringing. He had faith, but it was based on an error. So he's also referring to Sutra 1.7 and 1.8, which is about perception and misperception. That type of error is easy to make. We act, experience a reaction, and believe that the action and reaction are linked. No doubt all reactions are linked to a previous action, but the difficulty lies in deciphering which cause generated which effect. Beliefs need to be challenged by the rigors of everyday life. The bell ringer was able to cling to an erroneous belief for many years because it had never been challenged. His illness was an opportunity for him to test his faith. Most items of faith begin as conditional and need to be confirmed through the test that life brings. The word convinced gives the clue to this truth. It means to be well won. Spiritually, to be convinced is to measure our beliefs and inner experiences against the events, challenges, and sufferings that come our way. See Sutra 2.1 on accepting pain as a help for purification. As faith grows, it brings steadiness of mind. It provides the psychological room for life's lessons to be learned. Faith becomes the context in which we experience events. The result is that life is not experienced as a series of events without rhyme or reason, but as a profoundly rich, subtle, and complex field for learning and growth. Faith is cultivated when we think of all the blessings we have already received in our lives. This helps to develop gratitude. Gratitude ripens into devotion, and devotion culminates in faith. Strength. The goal of yoga is not easy to attain. It requires dedication, resolve, and perseverance to master the mind. Strength is a foundation of all vows and commitments and is needed for success in any significant undertaking. Whenever we make resolutions, it seems we are tested. Temptations, distractions, and old habits spring up from every side. We need to find the inner strength to persevere and to discover ways to succeed. If we pass the test, we will be living heroic lives, demonstrating strength and integrity in our undertaking. Strength is also what sees us through the dry periods of our practices. It is easy to meditate, pray, and do pranayama when sweet benefits are experienced. But what keeps us going when we pray and feel no one is listening, or meditate and spend the time half asleep or wondering what we eat for breakfast? Every seeker goes through difficult times. What once seemed rational now seems foolish. Why should I be non-attached? I don't seem to be getting any benefits or having any fun. And why should I spend a couple of hours a day meditating? I seem to be missing out on a lot of enjoyment in life. In times of trials, we continue seeking because we said we would. Our practice is not based on how we feel, but on a principles. That is strength, and that is beautiful. Mindfulness, or smriti, includes remembering our mistakes, their consequences, and the lessons learned. It also implies being vigilant, maintaining alertness and focus in everything we do. Mindfulness helps cultivate strength and faith. Cognitive samadhi is samprajnata samadhi is a preparation for asamprajnata samadhi. Discriminative insight. Discriminative insight, or prajna, is the intuitive knowledge necessary to reach higher states of samadhi, continuous self-awareness. And then I'm going to read the last one, which is from Jafar and Miriam's workbook, which sounds, the translation of it is totally different. So we go from where is it? We go from for the others, this asam prajnata samadhi could come through faith, vigor, memory, contemplation, and or by discernment. But Sutra 120 in the workbook is these steps, qualities will support the practitioner's journey towards the unbound or freedom, which sounds very different. Not as whatever, we'll just read it anyway. Shraddha is the personal conviction, deep trust that comes from experience, leads one towards truth, specifically the clarity of truth. Virya, vitality, vigor, perseverance, indomitable will. Smriti, a remembrance, memory that provides wisdom that supports a deep understanding. Samadhi is complete absorption. Prajna, understanding the true nature of the object and ability to embody the essence of the object without attachment to the object. This sutra is considered one of the most important as it summarizes, like much of the sutras in the first pada, the essential teachings of the evolutionary stages of consciousness. We can share here that the freedom, kaivalya, that is being pursued by the seeker is really the journey towards being fully conscious. Sometimes we minimize what being conscious is truly about, and this sutra brings us back into the realization of the awesome undertaking it is and how fulfilling it can truly be. I'll share the questions because sometimes it helps get the conversation going. Contemplate an experience or idea that you would consider a personal conviction. Write about how it helped you gain clarity of yourself, others, or in a situation. Based on the experience or idea contemplated in the question above, how did you gain vitality? Good morning, everybody. Hi. Yesterday we were super quiet. Is Sue on? Is Sue here? Oh yeah, Susan. Susan, I'm sorry we confused you yesterday. We won't do that again.
I have to unmute everyone.
Um,
Wait, where is it? Why is it not letting me?
So it makes sense to me that 19 and 20 would be paired together. Amanda was saying a lot of people pair them together or teach them together because they go hand in hand. So 19 is those who merely leave their physical bodies and attain the state of celestial deities, or those who get merged in nature have rebirth. So as long as you're in this state of, what do they call it? State of becoming, so long as your consciousness is still stuck in this state of becoming, you will have rebirth. Coming back. The upside is that you don't lose any points. So any meditating you've done, any meditating I've done as Adriana, when I come back in my next lifetime, I don't start from scratch. I start from where I left off, sort of like my consciousness or my level of awakening. I keep my points when I so to speak.
No,
But then, yeah. So that's 19, right? Like, don't worry, you'll be all right. When you come back, you'll give it another go, and you won't lose any time invested. For the others, so for those who do surpass this ambition for belonging, or this like an ambition for belonging, that's a what do they call that? Like a Freud slip? Not ambition for belonging, ambition for becoming. That's what I meant to say. I guess I have ambition for belonging. For the others, meaning the ones who don't have this obsession with becoming, this asamprajnata samadhi could come through faith, vigor, memory, contemplation, and or by discernment. And I feel like that applies to all things in life. These are meditation, like specifically meditation lessons, like steps for how to meditate, but they're also steps for how to live. You know, like all the things in life will require this. Like if you want to own a studio, you have to have faith, vigor, memory of the mistakes you've made to keep going, and discernment, you know, in your choices. And it applies to anything really. Like when I decide that I want to make my house plastic free, and I like, I'm thinking of Jafar's question about conviction. And so this new year, I have this conviction that like, I really need to think about the planet and how do I do my part for the planet. And it starts to, when you start to think about this topic, it affects so many others. So it affects food, where I get my food from, because I don't want my food wrapped up in plastic, organic or not. Like you go to Trader Joe's and buy all this organic food and it's all packaged in plastic. You go to Trader Joe's with your reusable bags and it's like you came home with 20 other plastic bags because all your food is wrapped in it. But then you start to look at the garbage situation. You start to look at recycling. You start to look at all the other things you purchase that are not. And so this conviction that you have of saving the planet or going green or not using plastic starts to influence all the other decisions. So now you're growing your own food because you've noticed the importance of that, or you're baking your own bread or making your own kombucha. And this conviction that you have, one thing, starts to bleed or like spill over into all the other areas of life that originally seemed unrelated, but they turn out to be the same thing. It turns out to be the same thing. I don't know if that example made sense to anyone, but it did for me. Like, I have to have faith that, first of all, I know that recycling is not a solution to the plastic problem on this planet. But I have to have faith that recycling is doing something. And I have to have this sense of discernment. So I have to be willing to go to these deeper places, these like nuanced places, and think to myself, okay, well, what kind of impact then does going to a restaurant have on the environment? What kind of impact does my getting on an airplane have on the environment? What impact does, you know, even the internet, like all the, you start to look at all the things, and your conviction will carry you, that original seed of faith, you know, that like, what did he call it? Indomitable will. So this indomitable will starts to help me in my decision making. My decisions become easier because of this will that I have, because of this conviction. And which you will need when you stop having ambition for becoming, because he's already warning the process will change. The process, it won't always be like, oh my God, I dropped in and I was just contemplating all of existence and I can see the light of blah, 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 and we can go through this like poetic feeling with our meditation. But there will be moments, like in life, like in our meditation practice, where that won't come easy, where you'll be like, this is so stupid. I've upped my meditation time to 30 minutes and I can't sit still, or you know, certain memories will start to come up, certain obstacles will be there, you know, and you'll have to have this commitment, very strong commitment to continue. And that's the same that what we're dealing with right now. You know, like the truth is, we may not know truly what's happening, but we have to have faith that what we're doing is the right thing. And we have to have the discipline, you know, to really follow our gut and say, okay, this is a big deal, and this is how I'm going to handle it, and really stick to your belief system. Yeah, what are you guys thinking?
I think that was beautiful, Adriana.
Oh, thank you.
What's coming up for me, and I don't know if it's just because I reread the Amanda's newsletter yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
but on the theme of the month of growing pains, and in Pantanjali Sutra, he says, just briefly, faith must be there. And then he says, or at least courage. And then he goes on to say, you must be strong. And I've been on a Brene Brown kick, and this idea of courage being strong is sort of misleading if you study Brene Brown, because she says you can't be courageous without being vulnerable. And if you're going to be vulnerable, you're going to fail. And being vulnerable is strong too, but we don't associate it that way. And I thought Amanda sharing everything, if you read her newsletter about running the business and talking about just the growing pains of running a business. But I think, because then he says, all right, you must be strong and you should have a good memory of all the mistakes you have made. So like those could be the pain you're sitting with, and take all of that and then go meditate with it so that you learn not to do this again. You know, if you keep feeling the same pain, then maybe you keep doing the same, you're getting the same lesson. Like we learn this all the time. If you're dating the same guy, you're trying to get the same lesson. You're not sitting and learning through the growing pains. You just keep getting them.
Yeah.
So that was and then it's like, then go back to having the faith, memory, vigor, and the contemplation, which I would consider the meditation.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was.
Yeah.
What you were reading, when you were reading about strength, and I might start crying, but the past 3 days have sucked. Like I keep getting horrible news on text message, and then I end up on the other end of the line crying with someone. My friend's cancer, they gave her a couple of weeks now. That was Thursday. Friday, my father-in-law, they took him to the doctor. He has 2 broken ribs. That's the mildest one. And then yesterday, my friend who's been trying to have this baby for 10 years lost her baby. She was carried. So, and on Thursday in my head, I literally was saying, I can't take anymore. And yet here we, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, here we are. I got up, I slept last night. I'm not sure how. I got up this morning and, it's the whole process of like how the mind clicks when you were reading the part where the guy who rings the bell and the sun rises. My brain with this one really horrible news, and there's so many terrible things happening, and yet the strength is there, the courage is there, and it's a whole process of like, if I look back, there's been times in my life where I've had weeks like this. I handled it differently, and it was a lot harder to get through, where I would just sit in a corner and just cry all day and mope. And yesterday I was able to be on the phone with my friend, and we both cried on different ends, and then I made her laugh. And then I called my other friend who had nothing really personal terrible happen this week, and I made her cry. And she said, and I felt terrible, but she actually said, thank you. She goes, I didn't realize it, but I really need to cry. Like, she doesn't know my friend who has the cancer, but she was crying because of that. And she's like, I've been holding all this shit and I just came out, so thank you. And I kept feeling like, oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
And I guess we all carry it in different ways. I know mine goes in like physical, like all this emotional pain just comes out in my body right away. And I've learned to acknowledge that, where before I couldn't. I just used to wonder why I couldn't turn my head around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like going back to this conversation of courage, we think like, sorry, I made you cry. You're thinking for your friend. Your friend is thanking you for helping her cry. It's like sometimes our sources of strength look like what society or what the norm would deem as weakness. So like to cry would be like, at least when we were growing up, "I'll stop crying, you softie," or, you know, this is like a weak thing to do. But to be able to cry and to be able to release that energy takes courage. It takes
Yep.
someone who's very in touch, someone who's not afraid to be made fun of, someone who's not afraid to be close to their pain. It takes a very strong person to cry. And to elicit tears from another, this is like a special power. I think they're covering that in the next sutra, how to make your friends cry. for their own conscious growth and healing. I'm sorry about your friend's loss. It's I would say that 2020 was a year that I thought, all right, the numerology is at least on my side. This is it. This is a year 4. 2020 is going to be lit. 2020 vision for all the things we have seen. I mean, that we're seeing for ourselves, all the things we're calling into existence and manifesting. And 2020 is it. Hashtag 2020. And then 2020 came and we were like, capital letters, WTF.
TF.
It's, you know, from on my end, it started with my dog dying and my dog needing to die. Poor baby. And then it was just, you know, I can't say that I didn't have many blessings in between. Like, I got to travel to Costa Rica this year. So in that sense, 2020 was hashtag lit. But for so many of us this year, we're only in April, and this year has been very heavy, very challenging, very full of things that make you look at yourself, things that make you look around, things that make you look at the structures that are in place, things that are making us challenge our belief system. That's what he says in this sutra. He says, challenge it, hold it against the proof. Where is the proof? Look at what's happening in your experiences, and then hold it against the meditation practice. Like, put the meditation practice to the test. A little bit is what I forget which interpretation it is. I think it's the Carrera one. But it's sort of like this invitation, like, okay, look to see what this meditation practice is doing for you. Hold it against what your daily experiences are like. And don't believe what I say. Practice and see what it does for you. And I think that when we're faced with a challenge, a big challenge like the one we're faced with right now, it becomes harder and harder to not identify with the prakriti, with the ever-changing, with all that is coming to be. And sometimes it comes to be very quickly, one right after the other, like things are becoming manifest really fast. And the things that we were thinking about the world, we're seeing about the world, and it's sometimes heartbreaking, but it's also a reminder not to identify with this material world, not to identify like, I am this pain, I am this destruction, I am, you know, when you identify with that is changing, then how you feel about yourself will have that same fluctuation, will have that same imbalance, because you're clinging to something that will not remain, that will not stay the same. And so we have to put the challenges of life against this test of the gifts of meditation, or the gifts of conscious living, but also like conscious I'm trying to say like up level, like a conscious growth, I guess. Like you're really, really in tune with how this practice makes the experience of being a human being easier or simpler, because it won't really be easy. Like the decisions that are in front of us right now, speaking to these times, the decisions that are in front of us are not simple. I mean, are not easy.
Oh, they're not simple either.
Well, what I wanted to say was, when your conviction is clear and when you know not to cling to the changing, you know not to cling to what is false, you know that that death is an illusion, right? There's always this coming back, there's always this renewal. So if my conviction is to not cling to that's changing, then the decisions that are upon us now, the difficult decisions, they're not easy. They're incredibly hard because we are identifying with everything in the material world, and the material world is not showing up like rainbows and butterflies. The material world is showing up hardcore, which causes us to cling harder, I think, or feel tighter. And the decisions will not be easy, the ones that come, the ones that we're headed towards. But if we're clear on our conviction, they will be simple. It's like when my conviction is a cleaner planet, don't contribute to the garbage problem. All the shit that you buy and all the things that are made out of plastic, and some things need to be made out of plastic, right? Like you can't help that your pacemaker needs a piece of plastic in it. This thing is going to save your life. But like everything that we buy being wrapped in a plastic bag, I can have this conviction of like, do your part for a greener planet. And when shit hits the fan, it's that conviction, even when things are really out of shape and messy, it's that conviction that will guide my decisions about greener choices, if that makes sense. So my conviction about who I am, my conviction about humanity, the faith that I have in God, the faith that I have for our capacity for a peaceful, loving, light-filled life, my conviction for that, not just for myself, but for all people, will not make the decision making in the next few weeks or months, whatever's to come, will not make that decision making easy, but it will make it simple. Because my conviction is that all people have rights, that all people eat, that all people have a home, that all people have the capacity and the privilege and the ability to express themselves creatively, which for many, 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 many people, that's not even an option. Like they're just on like basic survival skills. You know what I mean? Like some people are really just surviving, that anything beyond survival could be considered a privilege. And it's like my convictions for how I feel about the world, for how I feel about life, is what's going to carry me through the difficult decisions that are to come. I'm talking specifically like COVID-19 stuff, just to be relevant.
Yesterday, we finally managed to get a delivery from Costco after like trying to get a slot for 4 days. And when that food showed up, I almost started crying. And I told Pierre, I'm like, we are so privileged to get that. Like this person still has to work, you know, like they have to. And my sister-in-law was talking about her students. She teaches at a special high school where there's all these undocumented families, and they have the kids are like freaking out because a lot of parents have lost their jobs completely and they won't be able to make rent. And this is like right here, Flushing and Elmhurst. It's not far.
Yeah.
And it's
Well,
happening everywhere.
Yeah, the question is not who's going to deliver the food. The question is how do we get food? How do I get food? Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's a tough time we're living in. This, I feel like we're living, this is history. it's a moment, it's a very big, grand, special moment to be alive right now.
And
To be living through this, and to be in this practice together with all of you in the morning is very important, because I feel like it was, I don't remember which other sutra it was, but I feel like we were in this conversation before where like it's only the spiritual practice that's going to carry us.
that's what I was going to add, like the hope with everything happening and going around us, like swirling, it's this hope and this trust, and at the same time finding surrender to be, so we can be carried through this, because it's really not about here and getting up and saying I can do this one day after the other. Like mentally there is nothing left.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, it's 7:25.
Yeah, thank you for sharing this morning. So we have exactly 20 minutes. Would anyone like to say something? I don't want to censor anyone. If you want to say something. Okay. So then find a nice position, whatever you want, sitting at your kitchen table, laying down someplace, sitting someplace.
Oh, my phone was muted. I thought I was talking. I love y'all. That's all I wanted to say.
Sorry.
I love y'all so much.
Oh, we love you too, and thank you. You can
Sorry
say
to
more
interrupt.
if you want. No, you can say more if you want.
No, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so find your sweet spot, the way in which you'll be sitting or laying for the next almost 20 minutes. There's this word that has been coming to me since last week. I heard it, I don't know where. Oh, I heard it in my brain. That's what it was. All of last week, I kept having memories of church. And even though I'm not very conscious of like what day it is, there must be a part of my like body memory that knows it's Holy Week, that today's Easter. And all last week, I kept hearing the word exalted. And it must have been one of these words from church. You know, it's exalted is sort of, to me, a church word. And some days ago, the word kept popping up in my head, exalted, exalted. And I thought, you know, let's go to the glossary and look up this word. Let's see what what it means. And it means to hold something or someone in high regard, you know, to lift it up. And what we do here every morning is a beautiful spiritual practice. It uplifts my spirit. I know it uplifts many of your spirits too. And so I'd like to direct our attention just for a moment, for a few breaths, to what it is we actually do every morning. Like, we can call it sutra study. We can call it meditation practice. But ultimately, I believe that what we're doing when we get up every morning is a new skill that will be needed, that is needed, that will be needed more after all of this. And that's holding space for one another. So there's nothing I can do about your pain. There's nothing I can do about your suffering or your discomfort. And there's nothing you can do about mine. We happen to find ourselves in the same predicament. But when you hold space for me to show up as I am, without any filters, without any masks, without any judgments, I am given the space to be seen, to be heard, to be witnessed. And in that space, I unravel. I unravel my own mental bindings, my own harsh beliefs about myself, the ways in which I have hated or loathed myself. Those things unravel in the space where there's no judgment. And then the same can happen for all of you, where you show up and because you are held, because you are accepted, because you are received, because this time slot exists in our experience, you also get to unravel. You get to see the ways in which you want to be heard, and then you have the experience of being heard. And this is, I think, a skill we're going to need moving forward. And so I ask you, or I invite you, to hold in high regard what you are doing every morning, to exalt the experience of sutra study facilitator or meditator, Zoomer, that this position we have acquired, that we exalt it, that we uplift it, and that we ourselves feel exalted in the doing of this activity. And as you hold yourself in high regard, as you lift this image and this vision of yourself, as you uplift this vision of the work you are doing, know that it does help, that it does matter. See yourself as warrior, warrioress of the front line of emotions and experiences. And when things fall apart, you have the faith that they will come back together, like all things coming and going, living and dying, inhaling and exhaling. Now start to follow the breath. Like for this moment, it's the most sacred offering, the most holy of efforts. Is to breathe fully in gratitude and in joy of this inhale. And then to exhale fully in gratitude and joy. And let the rhythm of this breath hold you, warm you, and give you the energy you need to go on. And draw the gaze towards the center of the forehead. Keep the breath slow and steady. And let the seed of exaltation sit in the very center of your heart, the very center of your being. Why is the screen like that? And start to slowly deepen the breath. Fill the lungs and empty the lungs.